Like Derek mentioned, we are Fathers Matters. We're part of Compassion Outreach of America. And the whole point of this men's series, the whole point of Fathers Matters, what we do is to provide space, most importantly for men to get together, to talk about what it is to be a man, to talk about fatherhood, to talk about the way we've been impacted and affected by the different things going on in our day-to-day life. Far too often, men, we typically hold on to our feelings, hold on to our emotions, hold on to our thoughts. And sometimes that's not the healthiest thing to do. And so what we hope to do at this space is to provide a healthy outlet for men to discuss amongst one another, to share their stories, to find that we are a community, that we do have a lot in common, that we have a lot of the same struggles. And so tonight, Brother Shaq will be joining us to talk some about trauma and how it affects our community. And through that conversation, what we hope is that we develop a even bigger network of Black men getting together to talk with one another about what it is that they're feeling and understanding the systems that are currently in place that's causing some of the trauma that we're feeling. And so that's why we're here tonight, and we're glad that you all came out to join us.
Bam. With that, Brother Shaq, you want to give yourself a light intro, and then I'm going to give you a question to answer, or define, I should say, what is trauma? Can you define that after your intro?
Okay, thank you for that, and again, thank you for having me. I wanted to, and I got a good before I did anything with my own introduction, just in the spirit of networking, as our brother Bantu was just talking about. For those of us who are not as familiar with Fathers Matter NOLA, could you give us a little history about that? Just because we need to know how we all got here. And that's the reason we're all here. If either you, Daryl, or Bantu would feel comfortable giving us just a quick little history about Fathers Matter NOLA.
Yeah, I could do that. I could run that. So it was back in, I guess, 2018 or so. Me and Daryl got together. Funny enough, I had ran into him at a gas station and was telling him about this whole idea of doing the Fathers Matters, to talk about fatherhood. And so he was like, yeah, I'm with it. And so we got together through text, call, and email. And then he actually had like this whole thing that he wanted to do himself that he was really thinking about. And so we got his curriculum, put it together, and then got together with Shedrin. And I know she was doing this father's program as well. But Daryl and I got together to really spearhead it to get it where it is now. And so within that time frame, we originally started looking at a lot of the legal issues dads were having, because I know just from some of my friends talking about the different legal issues they were having with child custody that, I was really drawn into the work. I always felt like it was an unfair, corrupt system where it privileged the woman to have the dad, to have the child, while the dad was just relegated to making child support payments. And just from doing this work, I know that it's deeper than the dad's pockets, that dads want to spend time with their kids. And, half of that kid is with that dad. And if they don't know that half of their family, then they don't know half of that story. So kids need to know their full story. So that's why we know it's important for dads to be a part of their child's lives. And so we was able to get some legal experts to come on when we did our pilot test to share with the guys courtroom etiquette, courtroom decorum, and how to talk to judges, how to find the right lawyers, and things like that. And then it was able to evolve to a place to where now we meet on Thursday nights when we have our dad discussions, a 12-week program where the guys get together and we're able to build this network and we're able to have this intergenerational exchange of ideas where we have fathers who are father of 3 or 4 kids and they're 50, 60 years old. And then we have dads with their first kid and they're 30 years old and they're trying to figure it out. And so the elders are able to pour back into these younger dads and also even share how, hey, I got some legal issues just like you got them. And this is what I did to go through them. Or better yet, this is what I didn't do. And because of that, I have a rocky relationship with my child. And I applaud you for going through this with your child. And let me tell you that it's worth it, because if you don't, you'll regret it because I'm an old dad that regrets not being a part of his child's life. So we get those type of stories, and that's been really impactful. And recently we switched to the Zoom platform because of, as everyone is saying, that the Rona happened. Mm-hmm. And so by switching to Zoom, we've been able to expand our reach, been able to reach men that are out there in Connecticut, in New York, and also in Lafayette. And so through this whole fatherhood movement, we've been noticing a lot more men coming out and really stepping up to the plate, saying that, you know, I am a good dad. I'm here for my child. My story's not being told. And so this really provides a place to elevate those voices.
Right on, man. Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you for that, man, too.
Yes, sir.
And Daryl, and thank you all for having me. And I hope everybody listening got that little bit of rich history to know how come we came to be on this call. You know, as an organizer, one of the principles is really learning and understanding from history, and how to always lift that up, to start there, because things didn't start, the party didn't start when we showed up. You know, things have been happening. And so I'm honored to be here with you all, and everybody who is on the call, and even the brothers who can't make it, who will see it later, or whoever may see it. And Daryl told you pretty much who I was. I am Brother Shaq. I'm Director of Men and Boys Programming for True Love Movement here. And with regard to history, that was started by my partner, Ayana Molina, Mama Fire. She conceived this idea about 18 years ago now, to create a mental health organization that would respond to the needs of Black folk, that was specifically formulated for Black people who were, of course, under this oppression and tyranny here in America. And so I work almost exclusively with Black men and boys in a variety of capacities. But, you know, I wanted to talk more about the history and then the trauma, because I know, Daryl, you asked about trauma. You wanted me to define trauma, or you just wanted me to talk a little bit about it?
You could define it and talk a little bit about it. I definitely want to talk about the history of it as well.
Okay. And you want to do that, or you'd like me to do that, or?
Oh, well, you could start off with the trauma and what you had to say about that, and we'll get into the history.
Sure. I mean, we won't be able to talk about the trauma without talking about the history.
Exactly.
And I'm glad that you also hold that same value. Part of our challenge as Black men who are fathers in our community is much of the way we even engage with information is through the lens of the dominant culture. Right. So we're looking at this through a white organizational culture lens at first, not because we're bad people, but because that's how we've been socialized to do. So the only problem with that is it keeps us distant from it, and it looks more like it's some intellectual concept of a thing, as opposed to a response to what has happened to us. So just a very succinct understanding of trauma. Again, trauma is a response to something, but it's the damage. Trauma is like when your mind is damaged as a result of being overwhelmed. It's in your mind. And your mind is not your brain. That's different. See what I'm saying? But and we don't have as much time, but your mind being overwhelmed, and that comes into play where, you know, that's 3 words that Black men have not been able to say, is that I am overwhelmed, which then puts us in a different kind of a situation when it comes to us responding to trauma. And I'm not trying to say trauma is something new, because as Daryl pointed out, it's been with us for a very, very long time. And so we're talking now about persistent trauma. This is trauma that persists. So there's never been a time when it wasn't traumatic for those people in America who are politically designated as Black. It's never not been traumatic. And so before we can dig deeper into trauma, Daryl, I wanted to just talk about one other word.
What you say?
Terrorism. Terrorism. Because trauma is a response to terrorism. Now, we don't think as much about terrorism because the United States defines terrorism essentially as unlawful use of violence and intimidation unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. Unlawful. And that's usually the way we're oriented around terrorism. Terrorism or terrorists or something, people who are someplace else doing something, usually to the United States. That's our orientation.
Right.
But the use of violence and intimidation against civilians for political aims is the history and legacy of Black people in America. So, and from 1619 to 1865, it was lawful. And so all of the policies and everything that have happened since 1865, the stage was set from the initial 246 years of enslavement. So what I'm saying is at no time in the history of America of Black people, those people who are politically designated as Black, have we not been terrorized as a collective? Have we not been terrorized? And so our response to that being terrorized are the behaviors you see. You mentioned George Floyd and his murder. To see that re-stimulates historical trauma, particularly for those of us who look like us here on the phone, because you see you over there. You see you, a loved one, or whatever. And so, being at war, because that's what this is war. That's where the PTSD comes in there. The whole post-traumatic stress syndrome disorder, trauma. So that's a little bit about, just in short, about trauma, and I'm defining it through historical lens, but talking more about having a common language about it so that we can have an analysis. Darryl?
Yeah, thanks for that explanation of that. So how would you define, I guess you kind of talked about trauma already, but how would you define it in your own terms, if you haven't already, for us?
Well, I'm giving it to you in a lens I think that we can understand. And I'm using those familiar terms of the people who put this language on us and define the words so that we can have a common language and a common definition around it, so that when we do say trauma, we'll all know what we're talking about, as opposed to something subjective. Because what one person may say is traumatic, someone else may say, oh, that ain't no big deal. And that might not even be true, but that just might be a conditioned response.
Right.
So when we have a common language in the framework of some damage that has happened to your mind because you've been overwhelmed by something, that's universally applicable, particularly to being at war, in a war type situation. Even though we don't normally talk about our experience in the United States as being at war, I think that if you look at, again, what happened with the whole George Floyd situation and all these other things, that's war. This is what war looks like, being overwhelmed with force. And then we're because the idea behind when's the last time anybody saw somebody white on television in a situation like George Floyd?
I don't think that ever happened.
Not too
right,
often.
but we don't see the visual of that. So see, that's where the terrorism comes in at, because you're shown these images and it gets into your psyche. So there's a part of you. That's why, that's why it happened, and we all felt it. We felt it because we're connected to that, because we have a tape playing in our head that if you don't comply, that's going to be you. And that's traumatic. And that's, again, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's persistent in terms of it being re-stimulated with the images, with the laws, and every other people area that we experience.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really connecting it back to some of the things that they taught us about, like they taught us about slavery, how when one slave got out of line, how they would do certain things to put everyone else in check. And so present day, with the advent of social media and how prevalent it is, one of the things that we constantly see now is the replaying of George Floyd's last 10 minutes of life. And so as you talk about this visual and then the re-triggering, what's your commentary on that, about why do you think it's important for us to see the last 10 minutes of our life, or why it's important for us to avoid watching the last 10 minutes of his life?
Well, I didn't see the video, and I have no interest or intent on seeing the video, because I understand that the just for what you're saying, strategically, it is intended to re-stimulate trauma that is 400 years old.
Mm.
That's part of the war tactic. In other words, remember, in regard to the way terrorism is defined, it's about intimidation. It's about intimidation, and it's an unlawful use of violence and intimidation. So that's a big piece of how terrorism works, is to being intimidated.
Right.
So that means the intimidation you've internalized that. So that's the function in the mass communication tool of this time, the social media, allows for that image or that 10 seconds or that whole thing to be shown again and again and again and again. And so that's how you socially engineer and create group psychology, because everyone saw the same image multiple times, and it's created and shifted a particular consciousness in mass. So it's also become normative now, because we're talking about watching someone being killed. So then that demonstrates to all of us the level to which we have been dehumanized and desensitized, where we can sit there and look at that and not be connected to that. Now, the danger in not being connected to that is that we don't think that ain't got nothing to do with us personally. So it still gives us a sense of, well, that was him. He must have done something. He had it coming. So as long as you don't, so then we start talking about not resisting and all these other things that are foolishness, because this is about genocide. This isn't about compliance. This is about violence and intimidation, because those are war tactics. You overwhelm your opponent or your enemy with force, armed force in this particular case.
Brother Shaq, I like where you're going with this, man, because you actually talking about a few topics that I was hoping that you mentioned tonight anyway, as far as the psychology of it, the strategicness behind it, and also just planting the seed from the history of the terrorism being lawful, right, to our ancestors, right?
Right.
So I want to ask you this: Do you think that it's a possibility that trauma is biologically passed down through generations? And also, what would you consider through your research of working with Black men and Black boys exclusively? How does trauma affect them?
Okay. Well, my research is all, combines all kinds of things, but there was a study, and I'll find it. If I can find it, I'll put it in the chat. But they've studied the impact of trauma on genetics, what you were talking about in terms of biology. And it does have an impact on our genetic matter, on our genetic makeup. And so that would mean that we do have, again, the momentum of 4 centuries of trauma that is part of our genetic makeup. So what that means is we are born essentially traumatized. We're born traumatized. So that means we're in utero, we're traumatized. And so when we come out, we experience a constant, persistent re-stimulation of that same trauma as a social norm, a socially normative experience. So of course, that's on an individual basis, but as we are connecting and reproducing, now we're bringing, various lineages of trauma together and producing more that is still being re-stimulated. So what has happened, this is become normative for us, but it's maladaptive, meaning we're trying to, our best case scenario is trying to handle our oppression in a way that gives us some semblance of humanity, which is, you see what I'm saying? So it's like being in an abusive relationship with someone and you trying to discover tactful ways not to upset them. And that is your reality, with no analysis on why you're in this particular condition. So how does that alter your consciousness, your well-being, and then what does it do to your humanity as a result of that just in your lifetime, but we're talking about, 4 centuries worth, almost 25 generations of lifetimes, and then the cumulative effect of that. Just on that, I mean, it's unfathomable. I can't imagine what that is to be able to quantify it, to say, well, this is what it's going to do. I can't fathom that. But yeah. I do know. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, you had said the word handle oppression. And I thought that was real interesting. The fact that you're talking about handling oppression rather than overcoming oppression, because based on everything you're saying, that's a natural fact of life for African Americans, for the oppression. So I guess speak a little bit to that. Like, why would you even, so I guess speak to that a little bit. Like,
sure. Definitely. So I chose the word handle oppression because it is, though we don't articulate it that way, oftentimes that's the place where we conduct our analysis. In other words, we evaluate one another. Our critique is based on how well someone is handling their oppression, without any analysis on what produced the oppression, because that's what abuse does. In other words, you get this sense that your problem is, you need to listen to them people. That's your problem. Like, that wouldn't have happened if you'd have did what they told you, without any kind of thought on, well, why are they ruling you, and what gives them, like, all of that. That's a different level of questioning, but terrorism doesn't provide that. See, so we're busy with the intimidation, with the violence, with the persistent seeing of the same kinds of things. So what we're trying to do, and some of y'all on this call, I saw y'all have some great, like me, y'all have been around long enough for when we used to greet each other. Our people say this, first of all, they ask the question, don't they? What's happening, right? You ever notice that? Black people greet each other not with hello, but with a what's happening. That's a question. That is a question. That's a deep question, because that tells you something's going on, and I'm not sure, brother. You feel me? And when we say what's happening,
yeah,
what did they used to say? Oh, man, trying to survive, dog. I'm surviving. Think about how deep that is. You're trying to survive. I mean, it's real, because that is our ceiling of life. Our ceiling of lifetime experiences is survival. So that means if your ceiling of lifetime experiences is survival, that means you are living in the root chakra. You are living in the fight or flight. That is your normative experience. So if you're there, you're also going to be hyper vigilant. You're going to be hypersensitive. You're going to be fearful. You're going to be all kinds of things, because you're living right there in that root chakra in fight or flight, because you're just trying not to be killed. So then there's a profound impact on your ability to have relationships with other folk who are doing the exact same thing. So because everybody's doing it, it looks like, well, this is just how it is. So everybody, I'm just trying to make it. I'm just hanging in there. I mean, and we say it audibly because that's our experience. So I said handling our oppression, because we don't, the way oppression is set up, you're not supposed to have enough time to have an analysis on your oppression.
Yeah.
So most of the time, if they do it right, we don't. We're supposed to be working somewhere to make somebody white rich right now in this moment, but we ain't supposed to be talking about none of that. This is how it's set up. We're supposed to not have time to do anything like this, because we start getting ideas and say, well, wait a minute. So it's designed to keep us in a condition where we're intimidated, we're afraid, we're scared for our lives, whatever life we got, and we just want to not make nobody mad so we can have this little bit of life, and then we can die.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I think you even set up the whole idea of survival versus thriving, and that even in our conversations with one another, that's been socialized by our trauma. And so I guess I'd like to hear you speak a little bit about the way we as Black men interact with one another, knowing that we're in the same battle, and that when we see one another, we do the head nod, the universal language of all Black men. No matter where you go, we know the head nod. Right. And so you talked a little bit about being able to handle the oppression. And so some of some brothers may not handle oppression as well as others. And so do you think that causes us to look down on one another? How do you feel like that it hurts or helps our interactions with one another?
Well, I think any critique of how any of us, particularly as black men, but just black or black men or women or children or otherwise, is rooted in what I call being in your white mind and not your right mind. Because our, part of the socialization that makes our situation so tenuous and creates the perceived tension between black men is the white man that's in your mind, that particular lens, because that's been your socialization. So you've not really been battle tested until you've been able to confront and really go to war with the white man that's in your mind and what he's told you about your people. And that right there takes a tremendous amount of work, because when we're talking about black men and manhood, the black man in America at no time since the history of America defined himself for himself. So our understanding of manhood, we got that from looking up at the white slave master. No black man ever asked a black woman what did she need. No, we decided we got this manhood thing because we were watching this white boy. So oftentimes we want to be the white boy. That is our pinnacle of manhood. That is even in the music, we talk about how we the black version of some white boy. That's the ultimate accomplishment. So we really do esteem the very archetype that keeps us in this condition. So that creates a lot of internal struggle, or as you all went through the workshop, that'd be internalized racial inferiority with all of its different manifestations.
Yeah.
So a lot of the head nod that you're talking about with the brother is an acknowledgement, because we know that we're not seen everywhere. But the other part of that is rooted in safety and survival. Because depending on how that head nod come back or not, or what that eye contact is, can give you a different kind of feel.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would ask you, Darryl, like, where do you feel safe, man?
Where I'm at right now.
Where else? Where else? Where else?
I don't know. Not too many other places. Maybe just some family members' houses. I don't really. You know, and to be honest with you, safe in my mind is more of a like I say, it's like a personal construct. You know what I'm saying? I gotta construct safety in my mind first for me to be safe out, in the world.
Okay, good answer. Now, Bantu, what about you, brother? Where do you feel safe?
I keep it pretty simple. I'm safe around my people. Like whenever I'm out in certain settings, like I'm definitely all on that head nod, and very much on some all the black kids sitting together at the cafeteria table. Like I'm looking for people that look like me, act like me, and that's pretty much where I feel the safest at.
Okay.
I tend to gravitate towards that crowd. Yeah.
Okay. And listen, the answers that you all gave were beautiful, and I appreciate that. And they were also typical. I've asked this question to thousands of people of color, black people, men, women, the same. The top three answers is just what Darryl, what you said. Home, Bantu, talking about around my people, some family. You, Darryl, said in your mind, right?
Yeah.
These are the top three answers. Now I want to ask both of you brothers and anybody else on the call, do you ever have to be any other places than that? Do you have to be outside of your home? Do you have to be away from your people? Does that ever occur? Does that happen? That happens most of the time, right?
Oh yeah.
So here's the reality. You feel unsafe the greater majority of your life. You do. And so do I. So now so what I'm acknowledging is we're an insecure people.
Right.
So we don't feel safe. Now, again, it's not that there's something wrong with us that we're insecure. It's the terrorism that produces the persistent trauma that reminds us that we ain't safe nowhere. So again, that keeps us in our root chakra. You understand? And so then so I'm looking at this other black man like, I don't know what he might do to me because I remind him of him. See, the white boy is safe, but I don't, because he's not going to touch the white boy, but I don't know, he might do something to me, even though you might have had the same kind of everything growing up and everything. It's something, because this is what happens. This is what
security.
Well, it's the internalized racial inferiority, the self-hate. See, you remind me of me, and because I don't love me, because I ain't lovable, I mean, I ain't nothing. So you remind me of me. I don't have the courage to do the suicide thing, so I'll do the homicide thing. See how that works? It's a fantasy suicide, because killing you is like killing me, only I ain't killing myself. But the only reason is you remind me of me. And I don't like me. Matter of fact, I despise me, because I've been defined by my oppressor, and I'm every foul, low down, no good thing that you could ever imagine, and you represent that, and I have to look at that. So I see you as a potential problem. I'm looking at you through the lens of my white mind, not my right mind.
Man, you know,
That's powerful.
yeah, it's really powerful, especially how you was like the internal racial inferiority.
Internalized racial inferiority. Yeah, it's part of the internalized oppression.
So I'm liking that term because it sounds like scientific, right? And I appreciate the way that you are sharing your language, because it's to the point, and it's like layman to what everybody can understand. You know what I'm saying? Like you could tell this to a child and they'll understand what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna flip it a little bit and just talk about like the science of it, because I was doing a tad bit of a research before we got on the call, just to check to see if I could find some information so I could make sure that I'm, you know, up on things as far as how trauma affects the brain, and then Black men specifically. So I saw some statistics, and I could share them or send them to everybody later if y'all want to see it. I found some statistics that say trauma, and the way they put it is they say it's natural for boys versus females. And I want to mention, and that highlighted in my brain, because in your book, when you were talking in the athletics piece, you talked about your childhood as a boy, and the experiences that you had coming in contact with other Black men and other Black boys, right? And how it was all kind of the same, and also, you know, the perpetuation of, you know, that inferiority that you mentioned. You know what I'm saying? When they're not catching the ball, or the girl on the team, or you playing like a girl, right? You are, you know, sucker and blah blah blah, right? And it's interesting because I also saw like a picture of what they call the trauma tree, and they describe trauma as saying once you plant the seed of trauma, it's gonna grow from the root and into the bark, into the trunk, all the way to the branches. So it's going to affect the entire tree from the root, right? And that kind of goes to what you were mentioning earlier with all these systems that are in place, because, you know, we got the healthcare system who not acknowledging dads. We got child support and welfare that don't want the dad around to lift the mom up. You know, then we got the police. We already see all that's happening. So these systems are in place to continuously oppress the man, and you know that actually does something to a person's brain. You know, like they get affected negatively in all forms or fashions. Matter of fact, I'm gonna show this one, just one. I ain't gonna hold the whole scene up, but this one graphic that I found, and I think it kind of speaks to what I'm saying right now, because and tell me if y'all can see it or not. I'm about to hit the button right now. Can y'all see that?
Yes, I see it.
All right, so this graphic right here was real powerful to me. I'm gonna blow it up just a tad, because all our trauma, just like you had mentioned, come from generations upon generations of terrorism and trauma from slavery days. So it's already, just like my man Lumumba mentioned, epigenetics. It's already in our system. But I wanna highlight the left side of this. Do y'all see this left side? We got cognition. The impact of childhood trauma is the name of this, right? For people who can't see.
Yep. Okay.
And it's cognition, brain development, behavior, and mental health. And all four of those out of the 7 that's on here deal with your mind. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So overall, your mind and everything that relates to you using your mind in an effective way is being affected by this trauma that you've been dealing with. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate, that's just like you said, Brother Shaq, is we don't necessarily get a chance to sit back, think, and reassess ourselves to get away or get off of reprogramming ourselves from this trauma.
Right.
So I have a question. I have a question for you though.
Okay.
What would you suggest, people or men specifically, because we got men on the call, do to, try to reprogram themselves from going through this trauma or consistently re-triggering their trauma?
I mean, that's an excellent question. I think that is really the big question. And wanting answers, and then wanting to, because I hear you looking for something, you want to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that's part of something we'll have to confront and overcome, our wanting to do, only because we're still trying to understand what has happened to us.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And we're not quite collectively there to shift the consciousness collectively with a particular thing to do, a particular thing. And I'm bringing that up because that is the urgency is now. Like, we've been experiencing this for 400 years, and what we really want is relief. We don't want help. We want relief. Those are different. We want actual relief. So what relief looks like is us being able to reclaim our full humanity, which is not a place we've been as long as we've been in America. So we know nothing about who we were as healthy and whole people who were not ill-affected, not corrupted, not contaminated by the people who oppress us. So there is a process that has to happen. We call at True Love Movement, we call that the rehumanization process. Rehumanization process. And it is a very, very lengthy process that takes as long as it takes. And it's honorable, because I would say that if we are not actively on the road to recovering from what has happened to us, we got no business being around people, because we are dangerous if we are not actively working on reclaiming our humanity, because that means we're going to be mimicking our oppressor. We're going to be like, when you showed that graphic just now, I could hear as you were describing it, and I could see it. I'm older, my eyes are not as good, but I could also see it. And what I could tell by listening to you is that you liked the graphic, you appreciated the graphic, and I would say you liked it because of how it was laid out. It had a circular pattern with other circles, and it was color coded, and it kind of showed you like a flow chart or whatever. And the reason why you liked it, and the reason why they had that information that way, is because you're a visual learner. As Black people, we're visual learners. See what I'm saying? That's why when we see George Floyd dying right there, we learn that could happen to us. See, that's totally different than somebody telling us something. It's really what we see. And once we see these things, we can't unsee them. So even though intellectually we may think whatever we think, emotionally, and that's the disconnect between that whole cognition piece you were talking about. See, we can think ourselves around this, and we can intellectualize the emotion. We can intellectualize the impact of the trauma. And I'm bringing this up, Darryl, because this is doing it. We're a part of doing it now, because we're like unraveling some things that have already happened. And it's a process though. And it's something that has to be met with the same persistency or the same persistence as the trauma. And it's a very deliberate thing. You feel me? It's a deliberate thing. And it's deeply personal. It's deeply personal because you've got the trauma from all of your people that came before you, and you got what happened to you last week. Unresolved, right? And then I got it too. So we're tender. So I bump into you with your trauma, and I got my trauma, and now we done re-stimulate each other's trauma, and we don't have no visual on who caused this trauma.
Yeah.
That's why we tear each other up, because I can see you. I'm a visual learner. My problem must be you, because you doing this to me, because I'm a visual learner. So on the last page, not the last page, on the back cover of that book, a saying I coined a few years ago, because to make it clear, is that I said, you know, we all know that hurt people hurt people. We hear that. So if hurt people, imagine what healing people could do for our people. It has the same effect. And it also has this, but it's a slow process that we have to be willing to stick with and realize that we may not see the benefit of that in our lifetime, and be okay with that. That's the real thing. I mean, you know, this whole fatherhood and dad, and, you know, you feel a certain way, but that's a function, that's a role. Before you were that, you were a man, you were a boy prior to that. You were a boy who was traumatized. Particularly when you're talking about here in New Orleans, man, you know, 46% of the children in New Orleans, they show lifetime trauma. 46% of the Black children in New Orleans, they show like symptoms of lifetime PTSD. And I'm not trying to make this a children thing, because that's where we came from. Like, we were children, so it's not like, oh, the poor children. That's us.
Right.
That's us. You know, so, but again, being aware of the breadth of this thing, that it ain't a simple, you know, we'll just do this and do that, and you're gonna be cool. Because matter of fact, bro, even if I do know, and I know some things you don't know, we're not gonna be good till we all know.
Right.
That's just the fact, because if you don't know, or you haven't healed, or you're not healing, then you're not gonna support my happiness. Matter of fact, you might be inclined to take it from me. So we are connected in that way. It is so it's a both and. You have to do your own work. I do my work, and then we do our work. Is how we move past it, but we have to go through it to get to it.
Right. I definitely get what you're saying. So it makes sense to heal yourself, and then work on yourself as much as you can and stretch your arms out. You know what I'm saying? With people who willing to heal along with you. Yeah, right. I definitely agree it's a collective deal, because that example you just gave, if you might try to take my happy away, man, that's so real. Like, you know what I'm saying? It makes sense. And you could say, oh, that might really happen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know at least one person in your lifetime, you probably didn't tell something to them because you knew that they was gonna try to down your happiness. You know what I'm saying? So man, you really do have a point. But I tell you this, I personally feel like, you know, being aware, having awareness of, you know, the life that you live in, the systems that you living in, and then the trauma / oppression that you've been dealing with or handling most of your life, you know, is gonna be a start for that healing process. You know what I'm saying? And I gotta say, yeah, that's it.
This is healing.
Yeah,
this
definitely.
This
definitely,
is
man.
This is healing.
Does anybody on the line? I know. I had said I was gonna give some people some time, but the conversation kind of went on. But does anybody on the line have anything that they want to share as part of their healing process, or anything? I'll leave the floor open right now.
Peace, family. I'd like to speak.
What you say? How you doing? Can you introduce yourself, mister?
Yes, this is Brother Paul.
All right.
Brother Shaq.
Hey,
just a
Paul.
quick question to you. So you spoke about trauma and how it affects us, based on the oppression that we've dealt with in the past, and how it is genetically connected to us. And
Yeah.
so we have, but I see that we have some people who are, quote unquote, who are awakening from, this oppression, in the sense of, we understand what's going on with us. We understand why it's going on. We understand some of the things that we need to do to better this. So our situations, I mean, collectively as a people.
Right.
But I also find that we have the opposite effect, where so many of us, and so my question to you is based on what you said. So we have so many of us who are dealing with that fight or flight, and that's not to say that I myself, don't deal with it. That any of us who are on this call right now don't deal with it. But we have an assortment of us who I think that's the situation. So the question to you is, you have the quote unquote the woke, and then you have the collective of us who are having a good time. In your mind, and in what your research has done, is that an example of fight or flight?
Yeah, I think I do understand your question, Paul. I think that there is kind of like what Brother Bantu had talked about earlier. It's like when I talked about handling your oppression, it's like some of our people, they don't confront this because it's overwhelming. And particularly when we're talking about Black men, because that's what we're centering this, there is not that's 3 words spoken not by any Black man ever, to say, I am overwhelmed. We don't say that. Now, our lives will tell you that that's the case, but we won't say that, because somehow if we say that, it really makes it real, because that's the power of the tongue. So we're in denial. So a lot of that, what you're talking about, Paul, the partying and all of that is the denial. That's what the denial looks like. It ain't really that bad. Them people don't really hate us. Them people ain't really trying to kill us. So then we bargain. Oh, well, so what I just need to do is I just need to go over here, leading people, no, and everything gonna be all right. See, that's what oppression and that's what trauma does. Consider yourself to be in an abusive relationship and with America. And so, what makes an abusive relationship is that only one party is held accountable. So whenever something happens with Black people, America say, look what you made me do. See, look what you made me do. And then beat us up so bad that we say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have did that. I should have just, and then they come back and validate that and say, well, see, you said it, you know it. Kind of like the drama triangle. For those of you who are familiar with the drama triangle, Paul, I'm saying our people are kind of like on that. And this whole business about people being woke and people being asleep is, again, indicative of just how bad we've been dehumanized and how bad oppression has beat us up, because we're looking for secondary labels as identifiers. Secondary labels as identifiers. So yeah, I'm Black and all, but I'm the woke kind of Black instead of the sleep kind of Black. Again, that's negotiating your oppression. Like, I'm oppressed, but I'm better than them. As though, that's just handling your oppression. So many of our people, Paul, are just trying to handle their oppression. They're just trying to survive. They want to release. And I'm so glad that they do, because if you all that travel and live other places and been other places, if you travel around, you're gonna see some Black folk in some other cities. Man, they look really, you can see all of the soul and everything has left their eyes. I mean, they're dead people walking, looking at the ground. In New Orleans, we have the second line culture and the party culture and all that. That's a relief valve. That's what that does. That allows you to put all of that buildup of fighting with this oppression someplace. So it looks like we're aloof or we're apathetic but it's really the feeling of helplessness. That's how come when I asked that question to those brothers, to Daryl and to Van too, and we didn't have a chance to ask everybody, but I know brothers were thinking, where do I feel safe? And then having to grapple with the point that I don't really feel safe nowhere. Or like Daryl said, I got to construct this in my mind. Like the mental gymnastics that's required, the energy that it takes to do that and still not feel safe and still not be able to take that for granted, to be able to be in trouble and not know if there's nobody to call. I mean, to have that experience every single day, all day for the duration of your life, that's trauma. That's trauma. And then it's persistently restimulated. So some of us, Paul, will confront that squarely and say, okay, I don't feel safe, but it's not that there's something wrong with me, but it's because of something that's happened to us. And so what I do, Paul, is I have an allegiance to Black people. I have an allegiance to Black people. All of those people are my people, whether they woke or they sleep or they on the street or whatever, because we really are in the same condition. And the measure of me handling my oppression better than them is a false measurement, you know, is a false measurement. And so I do think they are in what we call survival mode. You heard, how many of y'all have heard that? Oh, I'm in survival mode. But what that means?
Oh yeah.
You're in survival mode. So you're not thriving, like Bantu said. You're not having this high quality of life. Like quality of life and Black people are things that are never in the same sentence. Quality of life is a term that you use for white folk. It don't even apply to Black folk. Black folk are supposed to be lucky they're alive. There is no quality of life.
You ain't right. You ain't lying. So many people. I remember so many young kids, rappers. I'm happy to make it to 25. I didn't think I was gonna make it to 18.
Terrorism. You see how that's terrorism? You see how they tell you I didn't think? That means someone put that thought in their mind.
Yep.
And who put that thought in their mind was the same people who taught them, the television, everything outside of them said, I'm not gonna live. So now here's the other thing. Here's that fight or flight that Paul is talking about. So since I ain't gonna live, I might as well do whatever. So now I'm dangerous to everybody because I don't care nothing about me. And guess what? You remind me of me. So I damn sure don't care nothing about you. So I'll be willing to do anything to you, because what's the point? That's the danger of how this persistent trauma causes us to implode. We struggle with loving ourselves individually because nothing about our experience has said we are lovable. Just as we are lovable. So as Black men, what do? We do things to make ourselves more lovable, more appealing. We think I got to get a certain kind of car, a job, a house, put on clothes, whatever it is, because those are the same things like what Paul is talking about. Those are external secondary identifiers. Because the message you done got is being you ain't good enough. You ain't no value to nobody. So Black people are only people that have a constant tape in their head about their value. And that value is related to how much money can be made from your labor. That's your value. So your whole life is centered around value, and that's not your value system. It's your value to someone else's system.
So let me go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize, brother. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. As it concerns the church, and I mean no disrespect to anybody who's on the line, you know, I'm just for informational purposes, I'm asking this question. So as it concerns the church, I look at that as another way that our people deal with trauma, you know, in a sense. But I find that the people that I talk to about the oppression that we deal with, even up to you know, today, you know, whatever happens, something happened to somebody who looks like us that has dealt with oppression. When I have that discussion with people who identify as Christians, they see no color. You know, that it's all in my mind, so to speak, and that give it to Jesus, put it in his hands, everything's gonna be all right. And so it's rhetorical, you can speak on it if you like, but sometimes the question is, am I wasting my time trying to get this person to identify with the fact that although you are, a Christian or persons, but there's one person in particular, man. I mean, we battle with
Right.
it. Am I wasting my time?
Well,
That's the
that's the
thought.
question. I guess
That's the question.
I guess, Paul, anything you do out of love is not a waste of time. But what I know is, as Black people who are spiritual people, we're deeply connected to the unseen and to the metaphysical. And of course, we know Christianity was imposed upon us for the purposes of controlling us and preventing uprisings, and we have carried it through it. We have carried it with us because it's a portal for that existential part of us. One of the things that I would say is there's no reason to try to convince somebody of something that they believe, because our beliefs are so strong, but what I know about beliefs is that when you put the word down there, belief, when you spell it and you look at it, the word lie
Good
is
evening.
right in the middle of it.
What's up, Aaron?
Did you hear that, Paul?
Yeah, go ahead. It sounds like he just got somebody in the background.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
brother, I heard that. Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, when you look at the word belief, there's lie right in the middle of it. And so the belief is a thing that we claim, we hold on to in the absence of being absolutely certain about a thing. And so people hold on to whatever they believe because of the hope that it presents them, the possibilities. And for people who are particularly in our condition that are so oppressed, our beliefs help us get out of the bed. Like if we believe I can live today, I believe I can make it, I believe I can make it home alive, that's what causes many of us to be able to get out of bed. So whatever somebody believes, I honor. I think that it gives them whatever measure of comfort that they can have in the absence of being absolutely certain about a particular thing. And so, people come to whatever they come to in the time that they come to. But one of the most dangerous things about being in America for our people, as we've been socialized to do, is we're very dichotomous. And so many well-intended Black folks want to then just impose this monolithic philosophy on the whole of Black people, because Black people, those people who are politically designated as Black in America, the one thing we've never been with our political designation is individuals. See, we're part of a collective. So that's how come whoever George, we didn't know George Floyd the day before he was killed, but it could have been me, you, or any of us. It would have been the same thing, because we don't get to have individual experiences. We're part of a collective. So that means, Paul, if these white folks want to start shooting Black people, and you talking to your Christian friend, they're not going to make this. They go, oh wait, I think he's a Christian. They don't know who the Christian is. They're killing everybody. And so you're clear about that. But your friend may not be. So, I think people, to honor folks' humanity best that I can, whatever someone believes, I do honor that. I lift that up and try my best to speak to them in a way that says that I'm not adversarial to them or whatever they're believing, because that's the whole individual dichotomous thing. Like, if you don't think like I think, you don't believe like I believe, you're wrong. And Darryl, you talked about the athletics chapter. That's in there. That whole win or lose is the only paradigm, and don't nobody want to lose. So then your whole ambition becomes, and how do I convince somebody that I'm right and force them into submission? That's something we picked up from white people. That ain't our place. wherever our brother or sister is where they at. And I love them all because that's my people. And I think whatever, you know, I don't know if that answered that, Paul, but I don't know if, I'm not saying you're wasting your time, but if it's somebody you really, really love, you know, we love our people unconditionally. And you know, find a way to connect, because maybe whatever they believe, you know, has kind of helped them. Not going to want to abandon something that they think is working. Does that make sense?
It makes incredible sense, but you know, my issue is, you know, just to give a little more to that conversation. It's yes, this person it has helped, but now you know, I'm speaking of not him individually, but just the Christian mindset as a whole. That uh, in my experiences, you know, when you speak about these issues, it's you know, black has nothing to do with it. You know, it's not a color thing. You know, it's racism don't exist. I mean, I hear these people saying this,
Right.
And I think that's unfortunate. My thing is with this particular person, you know, he has a following, and his following, that's what he's teaching people.
Right.
And unfortunately, part of his conversations that he had with his people, his followers, black and white, he has Caucasian people on his page also, is that the problems that we deal with are our own.
Sure.
And you know, we make these problems, you know, and he made it, you know, in his mind, and you made it, and because I'm an educator, I made it, and you know, you're an author, so you made it, and so anybody can make it. And I tell him it's a little more than that, you know. But you know, that's the thought.
Well, Paul, I would say try to get him to an Undoing Racism workshop with the People's Institute, and I think we can help support him to expand what he's saying, because you'll have, again, an analysis on something. Because what you just described was tokenism.
That's right. Oh yeah, definitely, brother. It is a fact that's what it is. I mean, he's even married a white woman now, you know. And, I mean, he grew up in the same 7th Ward neighborhood that we grew up in, you know, and he dealt with some issues, but you know, that's the mindset. And I call him on that. I say, man, you know, it's, you know, without being, you know, calling it that, you know, tokenism has a negative connotation. So I try to, you know, let him know that, you know, what you're doing, it's that, you know, you're appeasing the people who don't look like us. You know, you're appeasing them with the things that you say. But it puts us down though.
Right. Well, he's like what everyone I think has said on the call, and I even think in the chat from early on. He's responding to trauma, multi-generational trauma.
Yes, sir.
He's handling his trauma as best as he could. And you know, our critique for him is not how well he's handling that trauma, but to support him wherever he is, however he is, out in love, because that's our brother. And wherever he gets, however he goes, then he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my questions, bro.
Right on, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that that exchange, Brother Paul. And just to add to Brother Shaq's statements, man, I'm kind of with you in the same boat of, like, whatever people believe, that's what they believe. I'm definitely not trying to change anybody, like, belief systems and put them on, you know, the bandwagon of mine. But at the same time, you know, kind of lean into what Mr. Paul was mentioning, like, if there's somebody who you speaking with and they not reciprocating the same energy that you giving them, then you just gotta give them love from afar. You know, I mean, I'm speaking personally. You know what I'm saying? I'm speaking personally. I'm not trying to give instructions or anything, but just like you mentioned, with the collective mind of Black folks, and over these years and generations of this terrorism that we've been afflicted with, you know, it's not, it may not be as easy as it is for us to get on this call. And I can say it might have took some people on this call some years to get to this point to say, well, I'm gonna join a call or with all black men and share and listen. You know what I'm saying? But for some people, it may take a lifetime, 2-3 lifetimes. You know what I'm saying, to get them to be receptive of changing their mindset. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, thank y'all for that exchange.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Is there anybody else on the line want to share something? I know the chat been a little quiet. So
was our brother Bantu?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So one of the things, as you were talking, you was talking about value and how sometimes we as Black folk have little value for ourselves, and it just made me kind of think about different things. Like I know one of the things that came to mind was like Black on Black violence, and how I know there's definitely a movement out there to change the conversation to let's focus more on Black violence rather than white cops on Black folk violence. And I'm definitely on some let's keep the conversation where it is, because we do a lot of that Black on Black violence talk in-house. We don't need to have that out in the open for y'all to hear about. We take care of that. We have our own peace rallies and whatnot. It doesn't get any attention at all. So that's not for y'all to be a part of. We'll take care of that. So with all that being said, what are, I guess to kind of close out on a good note, because I know your t-shirt, your movement is true love. What are some things that Black folk should value about themselves? Like what are some key elements that we should always be like, this is what I love about myself? And so for the brother that has little value, little regard of self, of others, like what would you tell him to love about himself, to love about his brothers and sisters out here in these streets?
That's a good question. I like that. Thank you for giving some recognition to True Love Movement too. And so on the shirt, True Love Movement, the true love has represented self-love, and not in the flighty, superficial way that it's kind of a buzzword nowadays, but you know, a couple of decades back, on the inception, that it was in fact the truest form of love, that it wasn't an external situation. So what it really would, for that brother who you're talking about, Bantu, I would recognize and understand he's no different than us in terms of feeling worthless, feeling hopeless because of our condition. You know what I'm saying? Not because he did anything, but because of our condition and all of the messages that he's received about how he is worth less.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? And so acknowledging how the need to have something outside of himself, or in possession of something outside of himself, to cause him to feel more valuable, which we would equate value with love, lovable. So he feels more lovable if he has things. And we want to cover ourselves with things because we have gotten that we don't have any value. But it's dangerous, even the concept of value for Black folks, because that value is just like anything else. It's a symbolic thing up against another thing, meaning how you're valuable in relation to how much money you can make for white folks. And that's not just an employment situation. That has to do with the things that you buy and consume that are manufactured by white people, that enrich white people, that when you put them on you, you feel more valuable. And in fact, you are valuable to them. But to the degree that we mimic our oppressors, we also looking through that same lens through the white mind, and we see our people as more valuable too. So the true love is the ways in which that you learn to love, the process by which you love yourself unconditionally. And that's not an easy thing to do, because our love for ourselves, as it is for other people, is deeply rooted in conditions and circumstances. We'll say, you know, I unconditional, but we love ourselves up to a point. And it's about moving past that point to get to the truth of what it is. So that's where the sanity is. It's a bridge to your sanity to be able to actually authentically love yourself. And it shows up in everything that you're doing, what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're taking in, how you're engaging with people. Because the most important relationship you can ever have is the one you have with yourself. And so to the degree that you have challenges in other relationships is just an indicator of the true nature of the relationship that you have with yourself. Because these other relationships are simply projections. So you can't be something that you don't have, and you also can't acquire something that you aren't.
Right.
So the actual, for that brother to work with that brother to begin to, what we call it mirror work, so he can really see himself, but to see himself absent of these other qualifiers that people put on him or things society puts onto us, because you're not those things. I mean, you're not those things. It's not even my opinion. It's just, that's how come somebody who can have absolutely nothing material can suddenly get some money, and then everybody is around them, but they're not there for them. They like the things. So that doesn't produce the happiness that you want, because it's still not about you. The only person who's going to be about you is you. And that's the only person that should be about you is you. But that is not in conflict with other people, because it's not a this or that. It's not dichotomous. Me loving me doesn't mean that I don't have that for you. We are the sunshine people, brother. You know what I mean? Like we are an abundant people. That the whole lack, I think they teach that in the church. Like the whole lack thing is not our concept. That is a concept by less than 8% of the planet's people. They're a fearful people, brother. And so they put this whole lack thing into us, and we've internalized that with the rest of the teaching. Not because we're bad people, but because they're controlling the narrative. So until I really value me in that particular way, love myself unconditionally, I'm really no good to you. I'm no good for you. I'm no good for my family. I'm no good for nobody, because I'm dangerous. Because I'm out here looking to get something from you. Because I'm nothing. I ain't got nothing. And I think where everything is outside of me. So if you got it, I got to go get it from. So that's the way, in terms of really embracing our people, regardless of whatever they're thinking or whatever's in their pocket. That's the unconditional. And that's difficult, bro, because some of our people are despicable. You don't even want to be around them. But they're like that because of how this condition has made them. See, that's how they're responding to the oppression. We're handling ours better. Same oppression, though. We just handling it better. We're better adjusted.
You take a look a whole lot better.
Yeah, we're better adjusted, but still getting kicked. So our ability to see that's me. That's the real thing, like to really see you in that brother that don't look like you or don't talk like you or don't live where you live or think like you think. That's love. And that only can happen when you've done that for you. You can't go do that for them until you've done that for you. It's impossible. Because you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is to do that. So once you really can get that for you, you can be like, all right, I got it. Yeah, it's my brother. All right, I'm here. Regardless of what's going on, because you know that's my brother. You know, and if he's a danger to you or himself, then you know there's other ways to deal with him. But anything short of that, we'll work it out.
Right. Yeah, I like that response. Real good response.
Yeah. Thank you for the question, man. Thank you for your heart. You know what I'm saying? To even ask a question like that.
Yeah, because I like the fact that you said, that you're being honest about it, that there are some people within our own race that are despicable, that they are hard to be around. And I think as Black people, sometimes we gloss over it. And I think we do ourselves injustice by acting as if we don't have some folks that we'd rather not be around. But let's acknowledge it that, you know, they need some work done. And there's no shame in that. I know because I think we're all in some type of process, even as I'm pretty sure you looked at all this identity work out there and how there's a stage where an individual is really figuring out who they are. And so when you're adopted a Eurocentric mindset, you know, to get out of that is a process. There's some things that you have to learn to unravel, was the word you used, or you have to unravel some things because you've just been so adjusted to life being a certain way. And then when you're told a narrative that's counter to the one that you've been taught your entire life, all of a sudden it's like, this don't make no sense. And then, you know, there's some self-hate that could possibly creep in there. And then, you know, you got these brothers over here, the woke crowd saying, you sleep, brother, be woke, be woke.
Right.
And how, you know, they're trying to shake you up out the rest. And so,
Right.
you know, it can push you away. And so it's like, you know, we as Black people, how do we learn to have that?
Oh man, y'all stuck or I'm stuck? No bueno.
Bring those brothers back in. And I think you talked about that with that self-love. We got to learn to love ourselves first. And then we can only go back and reach those brothers who are the despicable to bring them back to a place to where they can be lovable.
Right.
Because right now it's hard to love them. And that's true love, being able to love somebody when they're unlovable.
And thank you for that, Ben. So you had me thinking a way to help us map that out is ask yourself, what is it that you could do? What could I do? Ask yourself this question. What could I do that would cause me to not love myself? What could I do? And whatever you could find that would cause you to not love yourself that you could do is indicated that you're not going to be able to see somebody else. See, that's what I mean about the conditions.
Uh-huh.
So it's not until you're able to fully and completely love and accept yourself, regardless, that you'll be able to extend that, that you'll have the capacity to extend that. And that's what it's going to require, though. That's what this thing is that we're talking about, this building this collective consciousness and, you know, bringing folks in and getting your brother. Well, you got to do that work. You got to do that work in order to have the capacity to be able to do that with that other brother. Because if you've not done that, you all are going to get to a point where you're going to throw your hands up and be like, nah, bro. Because that means we were there up to the point when as long as you were meeting the conditions.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you got conditions for you, you're going to have conditions for them. It's not until you don't have no conditions for you that you can really say, I got it. That ain't to say that everybody going to make it and come on in and whatever, because we know that's how it happens. That's not the case. But at least you can get all the way there with them.
Yeah.
And I find that more often than not, what has happened, they've never experienced that. Like nobody's ever engaged with them like that. So they don't know. They just don't know. But the deal is, just like all this terrorism and trauma that we've been talking about on this call, once they see that, they also can't unsee that.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's a newer possibility. Okay, so there is, even if everybody don't love me, I can see, well, these people have shown me in a way that I love myself, and they've demonstrated love for me. So it's possible. Maybe my family didn't, maybe, you know, whatever, but this thing happened, and that could be the difference in what shifts their trajectory. So you never know. You never know what kind of impact you have if you're prepared, if you've done the work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I'm with that. I'm with you on all that, and I know we're stretching into overtime. So I know if folks need to hop off, you're more than welcome to hop off. I don't want to keep nobody here longer, but I know Brother Shaq and I, we really chewing on this topic right here, and so because I know we're in overtime, I kind of want to extend it just a little bit more. I want to pose this question to you: do you think it's possible to love yourself, but to not love your culture?
Is it possible to love myself but not love my culture?
Yeah. Can I be a black man and be like, I love me. I love everything about Bantu, but black people as a whole, I can't stand them, but I love me.
Okay. Is that possible? I don't know I don't think it is, but here's what I'll ask you. How do you define culture?
How do I define culture? My people group eats, dance, how they dress,
Right.
what they smell like,
Right.
those things, how I would define culture. Our music.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I would define as culture. But I find my self-love in me because I like doing things this way. And it might not be associated with, and everything I do may not be associated with the black culture. Some of it may be associated with Asian, Italian, you name it. But it's not identified with one particular culture. But when I'm out in these streets, people know me as a black man. So it's impossible for me to have self-love, but not like my culture.
Okay, that's a little better clarification, especially the way you describe culture, because I think I'm understanding what you're asking me. So everything you said about culture and the way you would define culture, if you had to sum all of that up, would that just be culture is the way people live?
Yeah, lifestyle. Yeah,
so
I think lifestyle is the word.
So culture is a way of life. Culture is a way of life.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, say, like, quote unquote, black culture, if you examine black culture, the way black people live, the ways in which that black people live have not been of their own volition. Black culture, what we call black culture, is a response to the trauma that black people have experienced through the 400 years of oppression, tyranny, racism, white supremacy, and terrorism. So that means, and I'm drawing on something that, because you went to a workshop, right? You've been to a workshop.
I've been. Yeah.
Some of you have been. So one of the manifestations of internalized racial inferiority was something called exaggerated visibility. Exaggerated visibility. So part of the ways that we are loud and boisterous and flashy and shiny is in response to the level of dehumanization that we've suffered as individuals and collective, meaning if I'm not boisterous, you don't see me. And what we're looking for is the human connection, the human recognition. And so then when I find that if I do certain things, you see me, then I get a sense that I have some self-efficacy there. And so that becomes addictive to me because I really want the feeling of that I'm a human being, I'm an individual, I matter. So then I engage in this and I get it. And so then that becomes what I do. That's my response to trauma, and then I develop a codependency for it. Because then if I take all that stuff away and take it off, then you don't see me again. So then that becomes my secondary identity. I internalize that I am loud, I am flashy, I am boisterous, I have loud colors, I mean, whatever the case is. And so other people who are black like me look around and see me getting the results and say, well, I want to feel that too. So that's how you do that. So that's how social engineering happens. So that social engineering produces the culture and the way of life for our people that becomes normative. So we're in the absence of having an analysis that came about as a response to what happened to us. We didn't one day decide as the black delegation that we were going to do this way. That's not what happened. Everything we've done is a response to what has been done to us. So then when you walk out of the house as a black man, right, you look like me, like the other brothers, and you visibly a black man, you're a representative of a culture that you didn't create, that you didn't engineer, that you didn't even ask for. And so what you're speaking, I think, more about is loving Black people, or loving yourself and not loving your culture, rather, is really not, it's your dehumanization. It's the proof positive that you recognize you are dehumanized, because your life experience doesn't afford you the ability to be a single, sovereign, individual human being. You are perceptually a Black man. So you're collectivized. You're part of a collective, and you didn't ask to be in the collective. Nobody knows if you agree with the collective. You didn't vote on it. None of that. But you're going to get the political Black man treatment because you're a representative of a culture, and that's because somebody had the power to impose that on you. So you're saying, I don't like it that I'm not an individual, because white people enjoy individualism. That's how come a lot of the white people, even during this uprising, they're like, well, it's not me. I didn't do that. 2 of my best friends are Black. I don't see color. And they want to stand on, I didn't do that. And they want to be recognized and acknowledged as an individual because they have an experience. They have a historical, normative, political experience as being individuals.
Yeah.
But you, brother, are part of a collective. So that's what you're demonstrating is how racism, white supremacy dehumanizes you. Because you don't get to be like, you and I are probably similar, but then you and I are probably so different on so many levels, but we walk through the world together, we 2 Black dudes.
Right.
And from what we experience from other people outside of us, nobody's gonna say, well, no, you're really, really different. And that's not gonna be our experience. And so we can resent that because it's like, but I'm like him, but I ain't really like him. I ain't just like him. I'm my own person, blah, blah, blah. But you and I are not afforded that under racism, white supremacy. So that's what would make you love yourself and then not love your culture, because your culture is an imposition on you. It isn't of your own volition. And it's not, it's not beautiful in many ways because it's a response to trauma. So it's kind of ugly sometimes.
Yeah. I like the explanation on that, because I know even as you were telling that, you said it real well. I think about, we talked about it earlier about rappers. And I know it wasn't until I got older when I started listening, when I started like actually listening to it. Before it was just like, give me that beat. But when I started listening to the brothers and how, they always love to associate themselves with an Italian mobster. And I used to always wonder, why is that? Like, why is it that a Black guy likes to associate himself with an Italian mobster as if that's the epitome of gangster? And that, what we do is it's good, it's thuggish, but it ain't gangster, because I need to be considered in the same class as Capone, Gotti, and
right
last name.
Yeah, who are we idolizing, right?
Yeah, who are we idolizing?
And why are we idolizing?
Right.
But I mean, answer that though.
Huh?
I said, but answer that. Why are we idolizing those people?
I think we minimize our own culture. I think we don't do enough research into what it is that we do well. I think it's easy to look elsewhere. Because I think kind of like what we've been talking about already, like I think there's a lot of socialization out there that kind of causes us to look elsewhere for something better. I don't think when we think of something good, I think even simple stuff like if you're getting married, you may be like, well, let me see some of these good photographers, and instantly you'll look at the Black people last, or be like, yeah, he probably ain't gonna show up on time, or yeah, so-and-so is a caterer. Yeah, they're a caterer, but they food good, but are they gonna be there? Are they gonna do it right? How much they charge? That's too much, and then we just, it's a weird thing we do to ourselves. I think a lot of what you said is true, because I think we as Black people, we love our culture. I really do believe we love our culture, but at the same time, I think we put down our culture when the rubber hits the road. But I think, you know, when it's something like this, what's going on in our nation, then I think we really get down with one another, and all of a sudden we start seeing more like support Black businesses and support the movement, support the cause. But I think on a regular basis, I think we kind of are leery of one another. And I think that goes back to what you're saying about that social engineering and that dehumanization that we've experienced.
Right.
That makes it complicated at times being a Black man navigating in this world, trying to make connections with other brothers, but constantly being like, I'm trying to work with you, brother. Like, help me out here.
Right. Right. Well, you said it yourself just now. Good is code for white. See what I'm saying? Good is code for white. So when you got a good job, you live in a good neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's code for white. So we've already internalized. So if good is code for white, then bad must be code for. See how that works? See how that works? So this is why we like the mafia people, because they represent power. So if we idolize that which is not us, that looks different from us, outside of us, it's because they represent power. It's proof positive that we feel powerless.
Yeah. That's
why we want to identify with something outside, because it seems powerful. It's good. You see that's the deep psychological programming. So we minimize our culture as a result of our socialization.
Right.
So see, that's a result. That's just like the trauma. It's not that we got a lot of trauma. The trauma is a response to what they've done to us.
Yeah.
But because we're abused, we don't look at our abuser. We just look at what the abuser did, and we grapple with that, as opposed to that's the source of the abuse. So we grapple with that and try to figure out how we can be abused less.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what dehumanization does to you. That's what I'm saying. So the critique ain't. That's why my critique of that is not on us. Something happened to us that causes us to behave this way. It's not that we are inherently this way. So having that clear analysis that ain't nothing wrong with us, but something happened to us, is different. That is as different as when I think somebody earlier was talking about the slaves.
Yeah.
Somebody said something about the slaves. And so I would say enslaved African. See, that's different. But if you're a slave, you're identified by your condition.
Yeah.
If you're an enslaved African, that means you're an African that's suffering with a condition. See, there's humanity in that. And so to the degree that's what happens when you're dehumanized. That's why the whole hurt people thing is real.
Right.
Because when you suffered in a way, one of the worst things that we do to children in schools and to people everywhere, but particularly for Black people, is we want Black children to be respectful. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you. Please. Ask permission for everything. And we really put that on those children. And many Black children defy that. They oppose it. The reason they oppose it is they've never known it. They've never had the experience of somebody honoring them that way. So it is so offensive to them, because what it does to them is it reminds them that other person is better than they are.
Yeah.
And now they have to be a part of them having a better treatment. And they're being made to do that. And to the degree they can do that, they get rewarded.
Yeah.
How twisted is that?
Too twisted.
But we do that talking about, but that's the right thing to do. No, that's the white thing to do is what that is.
Yeah, you really touching on next week deal, because that's the follow up. You know what I'm saying? Like, how does trauma affect the Black family? You know, so talking about how it affects the children and the woman of the house. You know,
Right.
So
I didn't mean to do that, bro. I apologize.
What you say?
I apologize. I wasn't trying to get on.
Nah, it's cool. It's cool. I'm glad you brought it up, because
a nice little preview.
Yeah, that's a good little forward. You know what I'm saying? a good little foreshadowing into what we got going on next week. So I know we went over, and we appreciate everybody staying on the line, man, and to grab the info, man. And I appreciate you also, Brother Shaq, you know, giving us your time, even though we went over the scheduled time. But do we have any last words from anybody? I actually want to put up this this flyer that we have for our next 2 chats. But in the meantime, if anybody wanna share something, y'all can. If not, then y'all could check this flyer out. So this is what we got going on. We for the month of June, fellas. You know, if y'all didn't know, this month is Men's Health Month. And we are working in conjunction with Crescent City Family Services. They are family services across the river. However, they typically deal with mother and children. I mean, they typically deal with mothers and mother and child. But they are running something for the dads that in their program next week. So they also have some giveaways that they're doing in conjunction with us. We working on these events that we got going on, these Zoom chats. So we're gonna continue next week with Brother Shaq, part 2 of trauma. And as I mentioned, it's gonna be trauma, how it affects the Black family. And also Tuesday, the day before that, same time, Tuesday, 6, we're gonna be talking about men's health with my man Rudin Macklin. He's a former NBA player. He actually played for LSU. And then Thursday, CCFS is doing a swag bag for dads, a pickup giveaway in their parking lot. You just drive through, pick up your swag bag, man. They got some nice stuff in it. And then they also have some additional like gifts that they're gonna give out, raffle type. So fellas, don't seem like anybody said anything. And no, I'm looking at the chat. The chat is empty. Any final words from anybody? I think I pretty much talked as much as I'm gonna talk on the end. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Brother Shaq. We enjoyed your words of knowledge, your inspiration, and we look forward to carrying on this conversation with you next week as we talk about trauma and how it affects the Black family as a whole.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. So grateful to be in your company, brothers. Honored. Thank you.
Word. Well, all right. Well, and on that note, peace and blessings to everybody on the call. I will see y'all next week.
All right. Peace, family.